This story is titled, After Her Work Vacation, My Girlfriend Suggested We Take a Break in Our Relationship. So without hesitation, I threw all her stuff out on the street, and now she's standing outside begging for forgiveness. Sup, Reddit. My name is Marcus, and I'm 28 years old. I got married to Victoria 3 years ago, and up until recently, I thought we had a pretty good thing going. I work as an investment consultant, pulling in decent money by analyzing portfolios for wealthy clients. Most of these rich bastards don't even know the difference between a mutual fund and a money market account, but they pay me well to figure it out for them. Victoria is 26 and works as a marketing coordinator at a mid-sized company. She spends most of her days telling people they can't expense their daily coffee runs and dealing with the usual corporate nonsense. We had what I'd call a pretty standard suburban setup. A nice house in one of those cookie-cutter neighborhoods where everyone's lawn looks exactly the same, 2 cars, and both of us making good money. I spend my weekends mountain biking because I actually enjoy being outdoors instead of staring at screens 24/7, like everyone else seems to do these days. Victoria, on the other hand, likes shopping and those endless cocktail brunches where she hangs out with her basic girlfriends. You know the type. The kind who take 50 photos of their avocado toast before posting the one candid shot where they're spontaneously laughing at something hilarious that definitely just happened naturally. We never really had any serious problems until about 4 months ago, when things got weird as hell. Before this all started, our biggest fights were about me leaving my bike gear by the front door, or her buying yet another decorative cushion for the couch. We already couldn't even sit on the damn thing because of all the other decorative crap she'd accumulated over the years. Then one day, she comes bouncing through the front door like she just won the lottery. "Babe, I'm going to Vegas for Jessica's bachelorette party," she announced with this huge grin on her face. Normally, I wouldn't give 2 craps about girls' trips. Whatever. Girls' trips happen, right? Jessica had been engaged for something like 4 years and had finally pulled the trigger on actually planning a wedding. But something about the way Victoria said it was different. It wasn't like she'd just gotten invited to a party. It was more like she'd been told the winning numbers for next week's lottery. She was way too excited for what should have been casual news. I'm sitting there eating my granola, thinking about how much this trip was going to cost us, when I notice she's practically vibrating with excitement. This is the same woman who complains about going to family reunions because it's so much work to be social. And now she's acting like she got invited to party with celebrities. "That's cool, babe. When is it?" I asked, trying to sound supportive. 4 weeks. I need to go shopping for outfits, get my hair done, and maybe get a spray tan, she said. And I could already see the mental shopping list forming in her head. I could practically see dollar signs flying out of our joint account. Whatever, I thought. Marriage is about compromise, right? If this trip makes her happy celebrating Jessica finally locking it down with that human calculator she's been dating, then fine. I can deal with the expense. Within a week, our front porch started looking like a FedEx distribution center. Packages were showing up daily with designer dresses and clothes from brands I'd never seen Victoria wear before. These weren't the usual Nordstrom boxes either. This was stuff from brands I couldn't even pronounce. The kind of expensive items that cost more than my motorcycle payment. This definitely wasn't the type of clothing you'd buy to impress Jessica's drunk bridesmaids at some Vegas dive bar. When I was doing my usual monthly budget check and looking at our credit card statement online, I started seeing charges for stuff that just didn't make sense for a girls' trip. Since when does Victoria need a $350 dress for a bachelorette party? This is the same woman who usually shops at Target and complains when jeans cost more than $40. So I asked her about it. "What's this charge for $160 at the jewelry store?" "Oh, just some earrings for the trip. I want to look nice," she replied casually, not even looking up from her phone. $160 earrings for a bachelorette party? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "It's a special occasion, don't be cheap," she added when she saw the expression on my face. That comment stung a little. I'm not cheap, I'm practical. There's a difference between being financially responsible and being a tightwad, and I thought she understood that about me. I set my laptop down and looked right at her. "Then don't use our card. If you want to treat yourself, fine, but from this point forward, it comes out of your account, not mine. You don't get to throw around the word cheap when you're spending money that isn't just yours." She tried to brush it off with that usual smirk of hers, but I wasn't in the mood for cute. I didn't marry into a financial leak disguised as celebration prep. I didn't push the issue further, though. I figured she would get the message. But then she started changing passwords on everything. Her phone, her laptop, our shared Netflix account, even the grocery store app. When I asked her about it, she gave me some line about wanting better security. But suddenly, she wouldn't tell me the new passwords to anything. This is the same woman who used password 123 for everything and had me set up all her accounts because she hates dealing with technology. The same person who still needs help connecting to Wi-Fi at hotels. Now she's suddenly a cybersecurity expert who needs to lock down access to our Disney Plus account? I started lying in bed at night listening to her typing away on her laptop, and I realized she'd been staying up way later than usual. She used to fall asleep watching Netflix by 9:30 p.m., but now she was up until 1 a.m. or later, always on her phone or computer. She'd always angle the screen away from me so I couldn't see what she was doing. When I'd roll over and try to see what she was working on, she'd immediately close the laptop or turn her phone face down. Just work stuff, she'd say, but her company doesn't exactly require overtime research into whatever the hell she was spending hours researching every night. Here's where things really started getting messed up. She began talking about my life insurance policy like it was her new favorite hobby. Babe, you really should increase your coverage. I worry about you going mountain biking alone. This caught me completely off guard because Victoria has literally never given a single crap about my weekend bike rides. Not once in the 4 years we've been together has she expressed any concern about me being on the trails by myself. She usually acts annoyed that I'm wasting weekends in the dirt instead of going to brunch or shopping with her. Her usual response to my biking plans was, have fun, or try not to get poison ivy again, or bring back some good pictures for Instagram. Now suddenly she's concerned about my safety? Since when do you worry about my mountain biking? I asked, genuinely confused by this sudden shift in her attitude. Well, we're married now. Things are different. I just want us to be protected financially if something happens to you, she explained. But the timing felt completely messed up. Why was she suddenly pushing for a $400,000 policy right before disappearing to Vegas for a week? My logical brain kept telling me I was being paranoid, but my gut was screaming that something wasn't right. I started running the numbers in my head. We currently had maybe $65,000 in coverage through my work, which would cover funeral expenses and keep Victoria afloat for a year or two if something happened to me. But $400,000, that's quit your job and live comfortably for the rest of your life money. What really started freaking me out was that every single conversation about insurance happened while she was glued to her phone, texting someone. She'd bring up these dangerous mountain trails whenever she saw my biking gear by the door, and she started mentioning news stories about biking accidents she'd supposedly heard about. But she always had this weird look on her face when she brought them up, like she was studying my reaction to see if I was buying what she was selling. Did you hear about that guy who fell off a cliff in Utah? So scary. You should really stick to easier trails, she'd say, then immediately go back to texting whoever the hell she was constantly messaging. I started paying attention to when these insurance conversations were happening, and I noticed they were always when she was mid-text conversation with someone else. It felt like she was getting coached through talking points. I kept wondering who the hell she was texting that would be interested in our life insurance situation. Why would this mysterious person care about my biking safety? She'd be scrolling through her phone, see something, then look up at me with this calculating expression. You know, maybe you should get one of those GPS beacons for biking. You know, in case something happens and I need to find you. The way she paused before saying, find you, made my skin crawl. It was like she was thinking of a different word entirely. I felt completely insane even thinking what I was thinking. Who suspects their own wife of planning something that dark? That's some psycho thriller movie crap that happens to other people, not suburban investment consultants whose biggest life drama is usually deciding between an IPA or wheat beer. But every conversation about insurance felt like a sales pitch. She downloaded pamphlets, researched different companies, and even suggested specific agents we should talk to. This was coming from a woman who makes me handle all our financial decisions because she finds insurance boring. I kept thinking about how she used to joke about life insurance being a scam. Why would I pay money betting on your death? That's morbid, she'd say. Now she was practically writing policy proposals. 3 weeks before her Vegas trip, I was sitting in my home office pretending to work on quarterly reports while actually having an existential crisis. She was still running around finalizing outfits and spa appointments, completely clueless that I'd already started connecting dots that painted a terrifying picture. I felt like a paranoid lunatic for even entertaining these thoughts, but you know what? Better paranoid and breathing than trusting and 6 feet under. So I decided to do some digging. I started with our shared credit card statements since she'd been spending money like she'd just inherited a fortune. And yeah, these charges were still hitting our shared card after I'd explicitly told her not to use it. So now I wasn't just suspicious, I was pissed. Most of it looked normal at first glance. Those designer dresses, spa appointments, the usual expensive girl stuff that makes my bank account cry. But I'm good with numbers. It's literally my job. And patterns stick out to me. The spending had a timeline that didn't make sense. She books the Vegas trip, then immediately starts buying stuff for it, which is normal. But then there was a second wave of purchases that didn't fit the girl's trip narrative at all. Then I saw something that made my blood freeze solid. She had booked a couple's massage at some fancy resort spa in Vegas. For 2 people, on her girls-only bachelorette trip. I stared at my computer screen like it was written in a foreign language. There was no way this was a mistake. It was specifically booked for 2 people, male and female, at a time when she was supposed to be drinking Cosmos with Jessica and the girls. What the actual hell? I kept scrolling through the statements and found more charges I'd somehow missed before. A men's clothing store, $290. Some jewelry place, $160. Restaurant reservations for 2 people at places that definitely weren't group bachelorette spots. These were high-end steakhouses and romantic wine bars, not the trashy clubs you'd expect for Jessica's last hurrah as a single woman. My hands were literally shaking as I took screenshots of everything. This wasn't just cheating. She was building an entire relationship with someone while I was sitting at home like a complete idiot, thinking she was just really excited about her friend's wedding. The restaurant reservations really got to me. I recognized some of these places from when I had researched Vegas for a potential vacation we never took. These were expensive, intimate spots where you need reservations weeks in advance. The kind of places you take someone you're serious about, not random hookups. She'd been planning this for months. Then I remembered something from last month that had seemed innocent at the time. She'd left her laptop open on the kitchen counter, and I'd glanced at her browser history while grabbing my morning coffee. Back then, I thought she was just being supportive of my biking hobby since all the searches were outdoor-related. Now those searches looked completely different and absolutely terrifying. Remote biking trails. Utah. Cell phone dead zones mountains. Biking accident statistics 2024. Solo biker disappearances. How common are biking accidents? Isolated trails with no witnesses. Survival time mountain accidents. Search and rescue response times. Jesus Christ, was she literally researching how to make me disappear permanently? My brain immediately started making connections I didn't want to make. She's pushing for bigger life insurance. She's researching isolated biking spots. She's planning a secret romantic getaway with another man. And she's Googling accident statistics and survival times. I was sitting in my office sweating through my shirt, trying to convince myself this was all just a coincidence. But I work with data for a living. I know what patterns look like, and this pattern was screaming danger. Still, I kept telling myself maybe I was overthinking everything. Maybe I'd been watching too many crime documentaries lately. The YouTube algorithm had fed me one twisted husband murder story, and suddenly I was spiraling into paranoia. Come on, this is Victoria, my wife. The woman who cries during those ASPCA dog commercials. The same person who made me promise to text her when I got to the trailhead and when I got back to my car. Who insisted I carry a first aid kit because you never know what could happen. She loved me. I gave her everything. Stability, a good life, no drama, no secrets. So how could I seriously believe she was planning something this dark? Then again, why were her search terms reading like a blueprint for my funeral? And those texts about checking in at the trailhead, they'd seemed less like caring and more like tracking my exact location and timeline when I really thought about it. The first aid kit thing really started bothering me too. She'd bought it for me 8 months ago and made a big deal about how I needed to be prepared for emergencies. But now I was wondering, prepared for what kind of emergencies? The kind she was researching online? I spent the last few weeks before her trip quietly gathering evidence while acting completely normal around her. I downloaded 4 months of credit card statements, took screenshots of her browser history before she could clear it, and started paying real attention to her phone calls and how quickly she'd hang up when I walked into the room. The more I dug, the more screwed up it got. She was smart about it. At least she thought she was. She'd cleared her browser history from the obvious spots, but I wasn't checking the places most people look. I pulled up system logs and browser data recovery tools, the kind of stuff most people don't even know exists unless they've worked in IT or dated someone paranoid enough to install a keystroke logger. That's when it all came flooding back. Cache fragments, autofill suggestions, partial URLs stored in the browser's internal files. It was enough to piece together what she'd been looking at, and it was worse than I'd imagined. Insurance payout timelines, accident investigation procedures, even how to act devastated at funeral. I actually sat back in my chair for that one. Who Googles that unless they're preparing for a performance? Other gems from her search history included: do insurance companies investigate all accidental deaths? How long before life insurance pays out? Suspicious versus non-suspicious accident patterns. Acting grief-stricken tips. Widow support groups near me. How to grieve properly in public. Bereavement leave from work policies. And what to wear to husband's funeral. She was already planning her widow era and sending me to meet my maker while I was obliviously packing energy bars for weekend bike rides. She was planning what to wear to my funeral like it was another social event she needed the right outfit for. The absolute worst discovery was finding searches for young widow success stories and rebuilding life after tragedy. She was researching how other women had moved on after losing their husbands, probably looking for inspiration or cover stories. I was looking at months of search history that read like a manual for eliminating your spouse and getting away with it. And the timeline perfectly matched her sudden interest in my life insurance and biking safety. Then, the day finally came. Victoria left for Vegas with her suitcase, sun hat, and a casual, "See you Tuesday," like everything was completely normal. I gave her a casual nod, watched her Uber pull out of our driveway, and locked the door behind her like I was sealing off a crime scene. I'll be real. Part of me was scared. Not of her exactly, but of how far down this rabbit hole might go. I'd been sleeping beside someone who might have been planning my funeral, and I needed her gone so I could think clearly without the constant act. Without the fake kisses and fake love yous while she was Googling how to stage grief. I needed the silence to breathe, to figure out what the hell I was actually dealing with. So while Victoria was off in Vegas supposedly celebrating Jessica's last days of freedom, I went full scorched earth on our entire life together. If I was wrong about this, I'd look like the biggest paranoid asshole on the planet. If I was right, I'd still have a pulse next month. The decision to protect myself legally felt surreal. Driving to the attorney's office thinking about how that morning I was married to someone I trusted completely. And now I was treating her like a hostile enemy. But evidence doesn't lie, and I'd rather be wrong and embarrassed than right and dead. My first stop was the attorney's office. I transferred every single asset we owned into an irrevocable trust with my sister Diana as trustee. The house, both cars, my investments, my 401k, even my comic book collection from when I was a kid that's somehow worth like $6,000 now. If something happened to me, Victoria would get exactly nothing. Sitting in that lawyer's office explaining why I needed to hide assets from my wife felt like the most surreal conversation of my life. The attorney, this sharp woman I'll call Janet, just listened to everything without judging. "Mr. Thompson, in 25 years of family law, I've seen wives hide assets, cheat, lie about paternity, but this is unusual. You need to document everything and be prepared for this to get complicated fast," she told me. Diana called me that afternoon after the lawyer contacted her about the trust paperwork. "What the hell is going on? Why are you putting everything in a trust all of a sudden?" she demanded. I was pacing around my kitchen while Bruno, my dog, watched me like he knew something was wrong. "Can't really explain right now. Just something's not right with Victoria." "Not right how? Are you guys getting divorced?" "Maybe I don't know yet?" Diana kept pressing. "Look, I need you to just sign the papers and trust me on this one." "This is insane. You're talking about your wife here. What could possibly be so bad that you're hiding assets from her?" she continued. I wanted to tell her everything, but it sounded so messed up that I knew she'd think I'd lost my mind. Your sister calling you crazy is one thing. Your sister thinking you're having a paranoid breakdown and maybe calling Victoria to stage an intervention is another. Diana's always liked Victoria and thought she was good for me because she settled me down from my bachelor days. If I told her I think Victoria was planning to eliminate me for insurance money, she'd probably suggest couples therapy and a mental health evaluation. "Diana, I promise I'll explain everything later. Right now, I just need you to have my back without asking questions." There was a long pause, and I could hear her kids screaming in the background. Normal family chaos, the kind of life I thought Victoria and I were building toward. "This better not be about some midlife crisis nonsense," she finally said. "It's not, I swear it's not." She signed the papers, but I could tell she thought I was losing it. Can't blame her, really. From the outside, it looked like I was having some kind of mental breakdown over nothing. Next, I called a locksmith and had every lock in the house changed while Victoria was busy posting Instagram stories of beaches, cocktails, and fake laughs. She had no clue I was turning our home into a fortress. Then came the security system. Full setup with motion detectors, door sensors, and cameras covering every angle. The technician walked me through the app and showed me how to monitor everything in real time. Every ping, every movement would go straight to my phone. It felt less like installing a security system and more like laying perimeter defenses. After that, I found the most cutthroat divorce attorney in town and put her on retainer. Janet was sharp, brutal, and allergic to bullshit. I kicked off the paperwork to dissolve our marriage. 3 years down the drain, sure, but I'd rather be single and breathing than married and memorialized. Janet laid out the legal strategy while I sat there, still not quite believing this was my life. We'll file for dissolution based on irreconcilable differences, but we're also going to request emergency asset protection based on suspected fraud. The insurance angle gives us grounds to freeze everything. Meanwhile, Victoria's texting behavior during her trip was interesting as hell. On the first day, she gave me constant updates with pictures of the beach, the hotel, and group shots where everyone looked appropriately drunk and happy. Jessica in her bride-to-be sash, the whole cliché bachelorette setup. Day 2 brought radio silence for 14 hours, then one generic photo of a sunset with no people in it. No explanation for the communication gap, no group shots, just a sunset that could have been taken anywhere. From day 3 onwards, I was getting one-word responses to my messages while she was clearly active on social media posting stories. She'd respond to my "how's the trip" messages with just "good," but simultaneously post detailed stories about drinks and restaurants on social media. Her Instagram posts were wild, too. She went from group shots with Jessica and the bridesmaids to solo pics that screamed, "Look how hot and available I am." Cocktails on the beach, designer outfits, that fake candid laughing pose that says, "I'm living my best life without my boring husband." I started screenshotting everything before it could disappear. The timestamps showed she was posting solo content during times when she claimed to be with the group. Either she was lying to me about her activities, or she was lying to Instagram about being alone. At that point, I was running on fumes and barely sleeping. My mind was spinning every night, second-guessing everything from the moment we said "I do." It was like playing chess against someone who didn't know the rules but still managed to cheat. I wasn't even angry anymore, just numb and tired, like I was stuck in some slow-motion car crash and couldn't hit the brakes fast enough. Then, my buddy Kevin sent me a screenshot that confirmed everything. It was from Victoria's close friend's Instagram story, a video of her grinding on some random dude at a club with the caption "finally free." Finally free from what exactly? Oh right, from her boring husband who she was planning to collect insurance money from. Kevin's message read, "Dude, isn't Victoria supposed to be at a bachelorette party? This looks pretty coupley to me." The guy she was with was tall, tan, and looked like he'd stepped out of a Vegas nightclub catalog. Gold chain, designer shirt, the whole douche uniform. He definitely wasn't one of Jessica's bridesmaids, that's for sure. I screenshotted everything before it could disappear, building a digital paper trail of her deception. The contrast between what she was telling me and what she was actually doing was damning. That night, I couldn't sleep. I just kept staring at the ceiling, thinking about how close I'd come to actually increasing that life insurance policy. She'd brought it up at least 8 times, always mentioning how dangerous my biking was getting, and how she'd be financially devastated if something happened to me. The word choice was interesting in hindsight. Not emotionally devastated or heartbroken. Financially devastated. Like losing me would be a budget problem, not a personal tragedy. How many solo bike rides would it have taken before I had an accident on some remote trail? How long would she have waited before calling the police, crying about her missing husband who never came home from his weekend ride? The messed up part is I still felt guilty for not trusting her, even with all the evidence sitting right in front of me. Part of my brain kept saying, "You're overreacting, she loves you, this is all just coincidence." Society programs you to trust your spouse unconditionally, to give them every benefit of the doubt. When someone you love is acting sketchy, your brain tries to rationalize it away instead of accepting the obvious truth. But coincidences don't Google how long before insurance pays out on accidental death while booking romantic getaways with other men. Anyway, Tuesday night, Victoria's plane landed at 9:23 p.m. I know because I checked the flight status about 60 times that day. I was nervous as hell but also excited to see how this was going to play out. Part of me was still hoping I was wrong about everything, that there was some innocent explanation for all the evidence I'd gathered. Bruno kept pacing around the house like he could sense something big was about to happen. That dog has always been a good judge of character, and never warmed up to Victoria the way he does with people he trusts. My phone started buzzing at 10:47 p.m. "Hey babe, I'm at baggage claim, where are you?" I was sitting in my living room with a glass of whiskey and divorce papers spread across the coffee table. The irony wasn't lost on me. She was expecting a ride home from her secret romantic getaway, and instead, she was getting served with dissolution papers. "I'm not coming," I said. There was a long pause, and I could hear airport noise in the background. The sound of her world about to get flipped upside down. What do you mean you're not coming? How am I supposed to get home? You're not coming home. Check your email. The satisfaction of saying those words was incredible. All the stress and paranoia of the past few weeks crystallized into this one moment of truth. I hung up before she could respond. The divorce papers hit her inbox at exactly 10:50 p.m., along with a detailed explanation of why our marriage was over. Attached were screenshots of her credit card charges, browser history, and my personal favorite, a timeline of her insurance conversations compared to her Vegas planning. The subject line read, "Enjoyed Vegas? Here's your souvenir." The email was methodical, laying out everything like a prosecutor's closing argument. Dates, times, evidence, conclusions. I'd spent hours writing it, making sure every accusation was backed up with documentation. She called back immediately. I declined. She called again. I declined. On the third try, I picked up just to hear her lose her absolute mind. "What the hell is this? You can't just lock me out of my own house." Her voice was shaking, but I couldn't tell if it was from anger or panic. Probably both. "It's not your house anymore. Everything's in a trust now." "This is illegal. I have rights." "Yeah, so do I. Like the right to not end up as a statistic for insurance money," I said. The screaming started then. How dare I accuse her of something so crazy? How I was being paranoid? How she never did anything wrong? "You're insane! I would never hurt you. I love you." Love me? You Googled how to look devastated at funeral while booking couples massages with some other dude. That's not love, sweetheart. That's premeditation. At that moment, I could practically hear her brain scrambling for an explanation that doesn't exist. "I can explain everything. Save it for your lawyer." I hung up again and turned my phone on silent, letting her scream into the void. 25 minutes later, my new security system alerted me that someone was at the front door. I checked the camera feed and there was Victoria with her suitcases. And some dude I'd never seen before. Vegas boy toy, I'm guessing. She actually brought him back with her to our house. The audacity of this woman was unbelievable. He was exactly what I'd expected, probably wondering if this was the house he was going to help her cash in on. They spent about 15 minutes pounding on the door and ringing the doorbell. Victoria was yelling through the windows about how she lived here and I couldn't keep her out. She was trying to peer through the curtains, checking if any windows were unlocked. The desperation was obvious even through the security camera. "Open this door right now. This is my house, too," she screamed. "Babe, maybe we should just go to a hotel for tonight," the guy said, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. "No, he can't do this. I have rights." The guy kept looking around like he was sizing up the property value, probably doing mental calculations about potential insurance payouts. Or maybe he was just realizing he'd picked the wrong married woman to mess with. I didn't answer the door. I just sat in my kitchen watching the whole show on my phone like it was a reality TV episode. Bruno was at the window growling at them, which just made Victoria more hysterical. "I know you're in there. You can't hide forever." Actually, I could. It was my house now, and I had security cameras recording everything for future legal proceedings. They eventually gave up and left. My Ring camera caught them arguing in the driveway before driving off in his rental car. She was gesticulating wildly, probably explaining how I'd gone crazy and locked her out for no reason. He looked like he was reconsidering whatever arrangement they'd had. Honestly, the best $180 I ever spent was on that locksmith. Over the next few weeks, things got really interesting real fast. Janet filed for emergency asset protection based on suspected fraud, and the insurance company got wind of the situation and launched their own investigation. Turns out they take attempted fraud pretty seriously, especially when there's this much evidence. An insurance investigator contacted me for an interview, and I laid out everything: browser history, timing, Vegas receipts, all of it. She took notes like she'd seen this playbook before. She explained to me that Victoria's search pattern followed the classic insurance fraud preparation model: research target activity, find vulnerabilities, establish plausible scenarios, research investigation procedures, and practice emotional responses. She told me that the "how to look devastated at funeral" search was actually more common than you'd think. Amateur fraudsters always worry about their acting ability during the investigation phase. What really got me was how methodical Victoria had been about it. This wasn't some spur-of-the-moment decision. She'd been planning this for months, maybe longer. Every conversation about my biking, every suggestion about insurance, every concern about my safety, it was all calculated. The investigator showed me similar cases she'd worked on. Spouses who plan this type of fraud usually follow the same pattern. They research the intended method, establish plausible scenarios, then work on their emotional cover story. Your wife hit every checkpoint, she said. Meanwhile, Victoria was blowing up everyone's phones trying to control the narrative. She was telling friends and family that I'd snapped and become paranoid and abusive for no reason. Classic gaslighting. Her mom called me crying, asking why I was destroying her daughter's life. I answered calmly, "Mrs. Peterson, your daughter Googled isolated biking trails with no witnesses while trying to get me to increase my life insurance. Draw your own conclusions." That shut her up real quick. It's hard to argue with browser history. Victoria kept swinging. She showed up at my office unannounced, demanding to talk. Security walked her right back out. Then she tried calling my boss, rambling about how I was mentally unstable and shouldn't be handling client portfolios. Like that was going to work on someone who's known me longer than she has. Then came the cherry on top. She filed a police report saying I stole her stuff. You know, the stuff I had carefully packed up and sent to her mom's place with a full inventory, totally respectful. Nothing dramatic. That one made me laugh. I don't know exactly how that conversation went down, but based on the fact that no one ever followed up with me, I'm guessing it didn't go the way she hoped. Pretty sure the cops know the difference between theft and you got locked out after getting caught planning your husband's exit strategy. By then, even people who'd been in her corner were going quiet once the screenshots and search history started making rounds. The whole poor Victoria narrative didn't hit the same way when people saw what she'd actually been Googling. 2 months later, we were sitting in family court for the divorce proceedings. Victoria showed up with some public defender-looking guy who clearly didn't specialize in family law and probably took the case for grocery money. I had Janet, who'd been salivating over this case since I first told her the story. The courtroom felt surreal. 8 months ago, I was planning our future together, maybe talking about kids, definitely talking about upgrading to a bigger house. Now we were sitting on opposite sides of the courtroom while lawyers argued about whether she'd tried to eliminate me for money. The discovery phase was absolutely brutal for Victoria. My lawyer subpoenaed everything: phone records, browser history, credit card statements, even her search history from her work computer. Turns out she'd been using company time to research my potential demise, which got her fired when HR found out. Her employer's IT department had been monitoring employee internet usage and flagged her searches as concerning personal research conducted on company time. When they saw what she was researching, they immediately terminated her and provided everything to our legal team. Her attorney tried some bullshit story about how she was researching for a crime novel she wanted to write. The judge gave him such a look. "Counselor, your client also Googled isolation biking spots Utah and cell phone dead zones while simultaneously trying to convince her husband to increase his life insurance policy. Unless her novel required very specific market research, I'm not buying it." The crime novel excuse was laughable. Victoria hasn't read a book in years, let alone written one. She gets her entertainment from reality TV and Instagram stories. Then we got to the financial evidence. The couple's massage booking in Vegas, men's clothing purchases, restaurant reservations for 2 at romantic spots. Her attorney tried to claim she was planning to surprise me with a romantic trip later, but couldn't explain why she needed to buy another man clothes for our surprise getaway. Janet stood up and dropped the timeline like a bomb. Charges, dates, search history, everything lined up in brutal chronological order. From the first mention of life insurance to booking couples massages and Googling how to fake grief, it was all right there. No drama, no speculation, just evidence. The room went quiet because the pattern was obvious and didn't need explanation. The judge barely looked up before making it official. Divorce granted, everything stays locked in trust. Victoria walked out with nothing. No assets, no alimony, no shot at a second chance. Just a blank expression and a folder full of evidence she couldn't spin. Before walking out, she turned to me and hissed something under her breath. A mix of threats, insults, and denial. I didn't flinch. I let her say whatever made her feel powerful on the way down. The court didn't buy her story, and neither did I. 3 years of marriage unraveled in a handful of minutes, and somehow I didn't feel rage or victory. I felt drained, like I'd just pulled myself out of a burning car and was standing on the side of the road watching it explode behind me. But at least I was single, free, and alive. That's more than she had planned for me anyway. 4 months after that brutal divorce, Victoria showed up at my job. Her hair was messy, her eyes were bloodshot, and she was practically dragging herself through the lobby like she hadn't slept in weeks. She told the front desk she needed to see me urgently. Security called up, and I met her downstairs, just curious about what she wanted. She stood there with her voice trembling and said she was pregnant, and that it was mine. I was 2 seconds away from laughing in her face, but I kept it together. I just pulled out a business card and handed it over. Congrats. Let me know what the paternity test says. Brandon, that's Vegas guy, right? Might want to start saving. 2 weeks later, the results came back. Obviously not mine. Big surprise. Brandon had left her with more than just a cheap Vegas fling and a criminal record. Now she's working overnight security at some warehouse, barely scraping by in a shoebox apartment with a baby on the way, and no legal defense worth the paper it's printed on. She's broke, blacklisted, and can't get insurance coverage to save her life. Literally. Meanwhile, her appeals keep getting laughed out of court. Her reputation is gone. Her support system has disappeared. All those basic brunch girls who hyped her up are nowhere to be found. As for me, I paid off the house, Bruno's still at my side, I got promoted, and I'm still single. Absolutely not ready to mingle. People still ask if I think Victoria would have actually gone through with it. She didn't just plan my funeral, she rehearsed it. I dodged a bullet, literally, and all it cost me was 3 years in a ring on the wrong finger. Stay alert out there, guys. Sometimes the person sleeping next to you is Googling accidental death payouts at 3 a.m.